Saint Nocturne University. Chapter 5. Ashborne without ward light looked like a city holding its breath. The street lamps had not gone out completely. They glowed red at the edges, weak and sickly, turning wet pavement into dark glass. Traffic lights blinked the same color in every direction. Cars sat frozen at intersections while drivers leaned out windows, shouting into a storm that swallowed half their words. Storefront signs flickered. Apartment buildings rose black against the sky except for candlelight appearing in windows one by one. Humans were outside too. That made everything worse. They stood under awnings, on stoops, in gas station parking lots, holding phones that had no service. Some filmed anyway, because people filmed the end of the world out of habit. Others stared at the shadows moving between buildings, seeing too much and not enough. A woman in slippers and a raincoat pointed at the sky over Saint Nocturne. "Y'all see that?" she shouted. Her neighbor squinted. "See what?" The red line stretching from the university to the market district vanished the second he looked directly at it. The woman crossed herself anyway. 2 blocks from campus, the group from the dining hall moved through the storm in a formation that was less heroic than exhausted. Professor Graves led with her cane in one hand and a white candle burning blue in the other. Auntie Maxine walked beside her, muttering prayers, curses, and directions under her breath. Zora stayed close enough to hear them and far enough to be angry. 7 walked at her shoulder, Rain flattening his curls to his forehead, one hand tucked inside his jacket around whatever illegal spell component he had decided not to mention yet. Malik came behind them with Serafina and Andre, though Serafina had not spoken to him since the dining hall. Camille had remained behind with Dean Nightingale, which meant she was either being contained, containing him, or using the chaos to become worse. Nobody liked any of those options. Imani moved near the back with Kiki, Taj, Rome, and 3 Howl House students who had chosen action over faction gossip. The jacket on Imani's shoulders had stopped growling, but the crescent stitched over her heart glowed faint silver whenever the city sirens rose too loud. Brielle walked near Nia, but not beside her. That space belonged to Lila. Juno trailed close enough to be watched and far enough to avoid being touched. Dre carried a flashlight, his soaked work shirt clinging to his shoulders, his notepad tucked inside a plastic food service glove he had stolen from the dining hall. Kiki noticed. "You waterproofed your notes with a glove." Dre kept walking. "I respect evidence. Where did you even get a flashlight?" "Lost and found." "That's stealing. That's campus redistribution." 7 glanced back. "Finally, a political theory I can support." Zora did not smile, but the corner of her mouth considered it. The group reached Lazarus Avenue, where the university's perfect brick walls gave way to Ashborne proper. On normal nights, the street was bright with late-night food spots, campus bars, ride-shares, scooters, and students pretending they had quick errands when they were actually going to see people they had blocked twice. Tonight, every shop looked half-haunted. The chicken place on the corner was dark except for a grill flame glowing behind the counter. The laundromat's machines spun with no clothes inside. A mural of Ashbourne's first black mayor had started weeping red paint from one eye. The luxury student apartment tower, Saint Nocturne Heights, still had power in its upper floors, which everyone noticed and nobody appreciated. A protest flyer plastered to a pole flapped in the rain. "Housing is a right, not a donor perk." Below it, in fresh red letters that looked scratched rather than painted, someone had added, "Roots remember rent." Auntie Maxine stopped walking. Zora stopped too. "What?" Maxine stared at the words. Professor Graves' candle flickered. This is not just the founder's seal, Graves said. It's using current injury to open old magic. 7 wiped rain from his face. Can we get that in less, Professor? Dre answered before Graves could. The school is using gentrification as a ritual ingredient. Everyone looked at him. He shrugged. I listen. Auntie Maxine kept staring at the flyer. My block, she said quietly. It's been marked for months. Zora's anger shifted shape. She had known about rent increases. Everybody knew. Maxine complained every time another realtor slid a glossy flyer under the shop door. But Zora had thought of it as money. Greed. Blood court doing what old families always did, buying what other people loved and calling it improvement. Now the red lines stretching through the city made it look planned. Not opportunistic. Planned. Malik looked at the dark storefronts ahead. Who owns the development company? Maxine laughed without turning around. Boy. I'm asking. And I'm laughing because you know. Serafina's voice cut through the rain. St. Crowne Holdings owns the parent company. Nightingale Trust owns the land options. Voss Capital owns several vendor debt contracts. DuPont Family Office owns tax lien packages on 3 blocks. Malik turned to her. She did not look at him. 7 let out a low whistle. That was a family reunion of evil spreadsheets. Serafina's face stayed calm, but her hands were shaking. My mother keeps documents because she thinks someday people will respect us for being less sloppy than the St. Crownes. Andre glanced at Malik. No offense. Malik said, offense is appropriate. They kept moving. The closer they came to the market district, the stranger the city became. The redout had not simply dimmed the wards. It had made them visible where they broke. Thin red cracks ran along sidewalks, up brick walls, around manhole covers, under shop doors. Old charms nailed above door frames smoked. Protection sigils painted years ago on corner stores reappeared through layers of new paint, glowing beneath signs advertising luxury lounges and private memberships. Human eyes slid away from the worst of it, but not always fast enough. A man outside a closed liquor store stared as a red crack crawled up the wall beside him. He whispered, I knew this block was cursed. His friend said, you say that about every block. This one got graphics. A bus sat dead at the curb, its passengers gathered under the stop shelter. An old woman in a church hat looked directly at Professor Graves' blue candle, then at Imani's glowing jacket, then at Malik's dark red eyes. She nodded once. Ain't my business, she said, and turned away. Kiki whispered, respectfully, I love her. The Ashborne night market banners appeared before the district did. Purple and gold fabric whipped between streetlights, announcing a festival that was supposed to open in 2 weeks. Food. Music. Art. Vendors. Family Day. Spiritual Marketplace. Student Discount Night. A city celebration built on culture, commerce, and the polite fiction that everyone benefited equally. Tonight the banners twisted in the storm like warning flags. Beyond them, the market district opened wide. Normally, it was beautiful. Old brick buildings. Painted doors. Corner stores with hand-lettered signs. Barber shops, botanicas, bakeries, record shops, hair salons, small restaurants, galleries, spiritual supply stores, and late-night cafes that smelled like oil, sugar, incense, and rain on concrete. Saint Nocturne students came here for candles, hair appointments, plant-in bowls, second-hand books, piercings, cheap dates, fake IDs, real readings, and anti-advice they pretended not to need. Now every candle in every window burned at once. Not just Maxine's shop. All of them. Thousands of tiny flames lined the block, blue, green, gold, red, violet. They burned inside closed stores, behind glass, on stoops, in upstairs apartments, in the hands of statues, in empty flower pots, along the gutter. And every flame leaned toward Maxine's candle and conjure. The shop stood in the middle of the block, its purple door wide open. That alone made Zora's stomach drop. Auntie Maxine never left her door open after dark. Not in this economy. Not in this city. Not with half the campus owing her money. Maxine started forward. Professor Graves caught her wrist. Wait. Maxine looked down at the hand on her. The rain seemed to pause around them. Move, Maxine said. Graves released her. Maxine climbed the 3 steps to the shop. Zora followed before anyone could tell her not to. Inside, the shop had rearranged itself. Shelves that normally lined the walls had shifted into a circle. Candles floated at different heights, flames steady despite the open door and storm wind. Jars hovered with their labels facing outward: black salt, graveyard dirt, angelica root, red brick dust, rosemary, rue, lavender, cayenne, powdered bone substitute, court case powder, road opener, shut-up oil. 7, stepping in behind Zora, stared at the floating shelves. I love and fear your aunt, he said. Zora said, join the line. The counter had split down the middle. Not broken. Opened. Beneath it, a staircase descended into darkness. Maxine stood at the top, face hard. No, she said. The shop answered. Every candle flame bent toward the stairs. From below came the sound of music. Not club music. Not church music. Not anything easy. A low drum beat, steady as a heartbeat, layered with humming voices and the scratch of pen on paper. Professor Graves entered and stopped beside Maxine. Founder Seal 1. Dre peered around the doorway. Under the candle shop. Maxine did not look back. My grandmother's shop was here before the university took its first breath. Professor Graves added, before it was a shop, it was a root house. 7 leaned closer to Zora. For legal reasons, I'm assuming root house means community spiritual center and not basement ritual trap. Zora looked at the open counter staircase. Assume worse. Malik stood near the door, unable to fully cross the threshold. Not blocked, exactly. The shop simply did not welcome him. The air around him pressed back with the polite firmness of an auntie who had already told you no twice. Auntie Maxine glanced at him. Take off the ring. Malik looked down at his Saint Crown crest ring. The room watched. Serafina watched most closely. Malik pulled it from his finger. The second the ring left his hand, the shop exhaled. He stepped inside. Serafina looked at him with an expression Zora could not read. Not forgiveness. Not admiration. Maybe surprise that he could remove something after all. Andre entered behind him and immediately sneezed. A jar labeled vampire nonsense rattled on the shelf. Andre pointed. Is that necessary? Maxine said, it sells out every semester. Imani ducked under a floating bundle of sage. What are we looking for? The seal, Professor Graves said. And what does it look like? Something the city wants to hide and the school wants to use. Kiki sighed. I miss when problems had faces I could insult. Nia remained near the doorway with Lila. Her eyes had gone distant the second she entered the shop, as if memory was brushing past her without fully stopping. Brielle stayed outside under the awning. Rain dripped from her braids. Juno stood beside her, quiet. After a moment, Brielle said, "Go in." Juno looked at her. "Are you telling me to leave you or trying not to ask me to stay?" Brielle laughed once. "You picked a terrible night to become emotionally literate." Juno looked through the open door at Nia. "I can't stand in there with her looking like that." "That sounds like guilt." "It is." "Good. Keep it. Might make you useful." Juno's mouth tightened. "You keep hitting like you aren't bleeding too." Brielle turned toward them. The red street light reflected in her wet eyes. "I told you to find out who paid you." "I'm trying." "No, you're waiting for the truth to walk up and introduce itself." Juno looked away. Brielle lowered her voice. "I built a gossip page because I liked knowing before people knew I knew. I thought that was power. Now somebody is using the same mouth to move the whole school around, and people are hurt. Nia is hurt. And I don't know where my voice ends and the copy starts." For once, Juno did not defend themselves. Brielle looked toward the candles burning in Maxine's windows. "I don't know how to stand in there either," she said. Inside, the floorboards creaked. The staircase beneath the counter widened by 3 inches. A voice rose from below. Old. Female. Impatient. "Maxine Eloise Baptiste, stop standing in my doorway like you pay rent to fear." Maxine closed her eyes. Zora looked at her. "Who is that?" Maxine answered without opening her eyes. "My mother." The shop went quiet. Even the candles seemed to lean in nosy. Zora stared at the stairs. Her grandmother. The woman she had been told died before Zora was born. The woman from Nasir's vision. The woman Maxine had apparently been lying about for Zora's entire life. Zora's anger returned so fast it almost steadied her. "Oh," she said. "So we're doing family night." Maxine turned. "Zora. No, this is beautiful. I love surprise relatives in cursed basements." Seven whispered, "That's a strong sentence." Zora stepped toward the stairs. Maxine moved in front of her. "Do not go down there angry." Zora's laugh was small and sharp. "Then I guess I live up here." The voice below snapped, "Let the child come down before the house decides all of you are furniture." A wooden stool hopped 2 inches to the left. Dre stared. "I know a threat when I hear one." Professor Graves lit another candle from hers and handed it to Zora. Zora hesitated before taking it. The flame turned gold in her hand. Maxine saw and looked away. That hurt more than another lie. They descended. The staircase did not go as far as it should have. The shop sat above Old City ground, but after 12 steps, the air changed completely. The smell of rain and wax became soil, iron, old paper, and smoke. The walls were brick at first, then root, then something like bone-colored stone carved with names too faded to read. At the bottom waited a chamber larger than the shop above. Impossible architecture had become Saint Nocturne's theme of the week. The room was circular, with thick roots growing through the ceiling and down the walls. Hundreds of candles burned in shallow bowls along the floor. In the center stood a long wooden table covered in ledgers, photographs, broken keys, court notices, eviction papers, birth records, student IDs, old newspaper clippings, jars of dirt, and a single silver bowl filled with red water. At the far end of the table stood a woman who looked too alive to be a ghost and too dead to be anything else. She had Zora's cheekbones, Maxine's eyes, and a head wrap tied high around silver hair. She wore a white dress beneath a faded red shawl. Gold beads wrapped her wrists, each bead carved with a tiny symbol. Her hands rested on the table as if she had been waiting years to start an argument and resented everyone's tardiness. "Eloise," Maxine whispered. "Don't Eloise me," the woman said. "You let the school find the children." Maxine flinched. Zora's grip tightened around the candle. The woman's eyes moved to her. All the irritation left her face at once. "Oh," she said softly. "There you are." Zora hated the tenderness because she wanted to stay angry. "Who are you?" Zora asked, though she knew. The woman smiled sadly. "Mabel Baptiste. Your grandmother." Zora lifted her chin. "I was told you were dead." Mabel looked at Maxine. "I was told my daughter had sense." "Families disappoint." Seven made a sound like he was trying not to breathe wrong. Mabel's gaze snapped to him. "And who is this skinny lie in a wet jacket?" Seven blinked. "Seven Monroe, ma'am." "A prophecy thief." He stiffened. Zora glanced at him. Mabel waved a hand. "Relax. Half the prophets I knew were thieves. The honest ones were boring and wrong." Seven's face went through several emotions before settling on confused respect. Mabel's eyes moved to Nasir, who had descended last and stood near the stairs like he was ready to run. The chamber changed around him. Roots shifted. Candle flames bent. The red water in the bowl rippled. Mabel's face broke. "Baby," she whispered. Nasir went still. No one spoke. He did not know this woman. Not really. But something in him did. Something buried beneath Nightingale's calm voice, beneath missing memories, beneath all the years of feeling like his body belonged to a story nobody would explain. Mabel took one step toward him. He stepped back. Her face tightened with pain, but she stopped. "Fair," she said. Maxine's voice was rough. "Mama, why are you here?" Mabel looked at her daughter. "Because the first seal opened, and this house still remembers its job even if the living do not." Professor Graves moved closer to the table. "The market root seal was buried here." "Buried is generous. Hidden badly by arrogant people." Mabel tapped the ledgers. Saint Nocturne's founders bound the city through 4 anchors. Market root, Court Tower, Wolf Ground, Vale Stage. Each one tied to a wound the city keeps reopening. Dre pulled out his notepad. Mabel pointed at him. "Good. Somebody raised you with paper." Dre nodded once, like receiving a blessing. Lila leaned over the table, eyes scanning the documents. "These are eviction records." "And shop deeds," Mabel said. "Student debt contracts. Donor liens. Blood contracts disguised as rent assistance. Magical access agreements hidden in housing grants." Serafina, who had come down the stairs silently, reached for one document. Mabel slapped her hand without touching her. A spark cracked over Serafina's fingers. Serafina jerked back. Mabel smiled. "Ask." Serafina's pride fought her survival and lost. "May I?" "You may." She picked up the paper. Her face drained as she read. Malik looked over her shoulder. "What is it?" Serafina handed it to him. His expression changed. Zora watched him read. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the page, smearing nothing because the ink was older than weather. Malik said, "This is a purchase agreement for the Market District properties." Maxine's jaw tightened. "Current. Future dated," Serafina said. 2 weeks from now. "The night market," Lila said. Dre wrote faster. Professor Graves closed her eyes. "They plan to transfer ownership during the festival." Mabel nodded. "Human celebration upstairs. Supernatural transaction underneath. Old trick. Put music over theft and call it culture." Kiki exhaled. That one hurt because it rhymed with life. Imani looked around the chamber. "What happens when the seal opens?" "The anchor chooses whether to feed the school or the city," Mabel said. Seven frowned. "Anchors choose. Everything chooses when enough blood and lies get poured into it. That is not comforting. Comfort is for people with stable basements." Zora stepped closer to the table. "What does this have to do with me?" Mabel's expression shifted. Maxine looked away again. Zora slammed the candle down on the table. The flame leapt but did not go out. "No. Nobody looks away. Not tonight." The chamber hummed. Mabel looked at Maxine. "Tell her." Maxine did not speak. Zora looked at Professor Graves. "You knew too?" Graves' silence was worse because it did not pretend. Zora's voice sharpened. "All of you." Mabel touched one of the photographs on the table and pushed it forward. The image showed a younger woman standing outside Maxine's shop, one hand on her hip, smiling like she had just won an argument. She had Zora's eyes. Her hair was wrapped in gold fabric. A little girl sat on the steps beside her, maybe 3 years old, holding a red candle with both hands. Zora picked up the photo. Her fingers trembled. "That's my mother." Mabel nodded. "The little girl. Your sister." The room seemed to tilt. Zora stared at the photograph until the candlelight blurred. "I don't have a sister." Maxine closed her eyes. Mabel said, "You did." Zora's voice came out thin. "Did." Maxine finally spoke. "Zora." "No." "A word." "A wall." Maxine's mouth closed. Mabel's gaze softened. Her name was Aya. Zora looked down at the little girl in the photo. Aya. A name no one had ever said to her. A person erased so completely that Zora had not even known where grief was supposed to go. "What happened to her?" Zora asked. Nobody answered fast enough. The red water in the silver bowl began to ripple harder. Nasir stepped closer, eyes fixed on the bowl. "I remember crying," he said. Every face turned to him. He looked at the photograph. "Not me. A child. A girl. She was crying under the table." Mabel's eyes filled. Zora's breath caught. Nasir looked at her. "I think she was hiding with me." The chamber lights dimmed. A memory rose above the silver bowl. 2 children under a ritual table in the lower chapel. 1 infant wrapped in dark cloth. 1 little girl with tear-streaked cheeks, clutching a red candle that would not light. Around them, adult voices shouted. "This pact requires a bridge." The first one failed. "Then use the spare." "She is not a spare." A younger Maxine dove under the table, grabbed the baby, then reached for the little girl. A hand seized Maxine from behind. The memory shook. Mabel's voice, younger and furious, screamed, "Run!" The image broke. The chamber returned. Zora could not move. 7 looked like he wanted to say something and understood every sentence would be wrong. Maxine's face was wet. She was taken, Maxine whispered. Not killed. Taken. We tried to find her. Zora turned to her slowly. Tried. Zora, your mother nearly died that night. Nasir's mother did die. The school erased rooms, moved records, changed memories. We had one baby we could save and one child we could not reach. And everyone decided I didn't need to know she existed. Maxine flinched. Your mother decided. Do not put this on her when she isn't here. She is why I kept quiet. Zora's anger cracked open, showing the hurt underneath. Where is Aya now? Mabel looked at Professor Graves. Professor Graves looked at the table. There it was again. The shape of another buried thing. Zora laughed once. It sounded nothing like humor. Professor. Graves' face was pale. There were rumors. What rumors? That a child from the failed bridge line survived in council custody. Nasir's voice was quiet. Failed bridge line. Professor Graves looked ashamed. That was their term. Not mine. Brielle, who had come down at some point and stood near the stairs, whispered, that is disgusting. No one argued. Lila moved closer to the ledgers. Council custody would leave records. Mabel nodded. Hidden in transactions. Children were never filed as children. They were filed as assets, wards, grants, ritual liabilities. Dre's pen stopped. He looked up slowly. Ritual liabilities. Mabel looked at him. You know that phrase? Dre reached into his plastic-covered notepad and flipped back several pages. I heard a council aide say it last semester during a donor dinner. Thought they were talking about property insurance. He read from his notes. The Bellamy girl is not a liability yet. The Voss boy is. The Baptiste line becomes one if the sister record surfaces. Zora's body went cold. Lila stared at Dre. You wrote that down and didn't tell anyone. Dre's jaw tightened. At the time, it sounded like rich people nonsense. 7 said quietly, rich people nonsense is usually crime in a blazer. Dre nodded once. I know that now. Zora stepped toward him. Who said it? Dre looked at his notes. Councilman Olin Mercer. Caleb, who had somehow been dragged with them under threat of public hatred and still stood near the stairs looking damp and miserable, made a weak sound. Everyone turned. Kiki squinted at him. Mercer. Caleb swallowed. That's my uncle. The chamber went silent. Then everyone started talking. You stole housing money and your uncle is on the council. Absolutely not. This man is a side quest with main villain relatives. Of course his name was on the bracelet chain. Caleb lifted both hands. I didn't know about any ritual children. Talia was not there to throw something at him, so Kiki did it for her. A small packet of salt hit him in the chest. Mabel pointed at Caleb. Why is he here? Dre answered, the dining hall door sealed and then life got fast. Mabel looked at Maxine. Your school brings home clutter. Maxine muttered, he is not mine. Serafina stared at Caleb with fresh disgust. Your uncle was at the auction. Caleb shook his head. No. He hates campus events. Malik looked at him. He sent you. No, Caleb stopped. His face shifted through confusion, memory, and dread. Zora stepped closer. He what? Caleb's voice thinned. He told me if I wanted the Housing Coalition funding match, I needed to attend a donor auction and show I could move in complicated rooms. He gave me the bidding number. Lila's expression became murderous. You used coalition money because your councilman uncle told you to impress donors. I thought it would unlock a match. You thought stealing money would unlock money. Caleb looked around desperately. When you say it like that, Dre said, there is no good way to say it. The chamber trembled. Above them, thunder cracked so hard dust fell from the roots. Mabel looked toward the ceiling. The seal is pulling. Professor Graves moved to the silver bowl. We need to close it before the market district transfers into the school circuit. What does closing it require? Imani asked. Mabel looked around the chamber. A refusal. Seven frowned. A refusal of what? The wound. Kiki threw her hands up. Can old magic ever speak like it has a group chat? Mabel's eyes cut to her. Kiki lowered her hands. Respectfully. Mabel pointed to the documents. The market root seal feeds on displacement. Extraction. Taking homes, shops, names, children, labor, magic, then making people grateful for whatever scraps remain. To close it, someone tied to the taking must refuse the benefit publicly and bind the refusal to restitution. Everyone looked at Malik. Malik did not flinch. Then everyone looked at Serafina too. She did flinch. Not from guilt, exactly. From recognition. Malik stepped forward. My family owns part of it. I can refuse the St. Crowne claim. Mabel shook her head. A symbolic refusal from a son without signing authority is pretty. Pretty does not move land. Malik's jaw tightened. Serafina looked at the documents in her hands. My mother gave me power of attorney over certain DuPont holdings last month, she said quietly. For training. Malik turned to her. Serafina did not look at him. You can void the tax lien package? Lila asked. Serafina's laugh was hollow. No. But I can release it to the Housing Coalition if the transfer has not executed. The room shifted. Caleb whispered, the coalition account is frozen because of me. Lila turned slowly. Caleb stepped back into the stairs. Dre said, don't run. The basement might have opinions. Mabel looked at Caleb like she was deciding whether those opinions should be fatal. Serafina lifted the document. If the coalition can't legally receive, the release fails. Seven snapped his fingers. Unless the coalition has an emergency trustee. Lila frowned. It doesn't. Dre raised a hand. Everyone looked at him. I mean, he said, technically, it might. Lila stared. Dre. You were busy with the protest and the paper, so when we filled out the emergency fund paperwork, you made me backup custodian because I was the only one who didn't miss the financial literacy training. Lila's mouth fell open. You never said yes. I signed the form. You told me forms were a scam. They are. I read them. For the first time all night, Professor Graves looked impressed. Serafina looked at Dre. You can receive the release. Dre looked at the ledgers, then at Maxine, then at the stairs that led back to the district. Would that protect the shops? Mabel answered. It gives the seal a new story. Not enough to fix the city. Enough to stop the school from eating this block tonight. Dre nodded. Then do it. Serafina reached into her coat. Malik tensed. She pulled out a slim silver pen. Seven exhaled. I hate that I expected a dagger. Serafina looked at him. My family uses documents. Cleaner. She placed the tax lien package on the table and began writing. The second the pen touched paper, the chamber screamed. The sound came from the walls, the roots, the ledgers, the water, the city above. Candles flared high. Papers whipped into the air. The staircase behind them stretched upward, becoming longer, darker, harder to reach. Caleb shouted and grabbed the railing. A shadow spilled down the stairs. Not a read-out apparition this time. A man. Councilman Olin Mercer descended in a dark raincoat, silver hair perfect despite the storm, face arranged in concern. He had practiced for cameras. Two ward officers came behind him, their uniforms black and red, eyes hidden by rain-slick visors. Caleb's voice cracked. Uncle Olin. Councilman Mercer looked at him. The concern vanished. Caleb, he said. I am disappointed, but not surprised. Caleb actually looked hurt. Kiki whispered, that family tree needs pruning. Councilman Mercer turned to the chamber. His eyes passed over everyone, the students, the ledgers, Mabel, Maxine, Professor Graves, the documents beneath Serafina's hand. His gaze stopped on Nasir. Then Zora. Then the photo of Aya on the table. Step away from those records, he said. Lila moved closer to Dre. Are those real ward officers? Dre looked at their boots. No mud. Outside was a storm. Everyone noticed. Imani's claw slid out. The officers reached for their batons. Professor Graves lifted her cane. Olin. Sanaa, he said. Still confusing rebellion with conscience. Still confusing theft with governance. His smile tightened. This seal is council property. Mabel laughed. The sound cracked across the chamber like hot oil. Baby, I died before your career had teeth. Do not come under my daughter's shop and call my bones property. One officer stepped forward. Maxine threw a handful of powder without looking. The officer froze mid-step, sneezed once, and collapsed backward into a chair that had not been there a second before. The chair wrapped him in roots. Maxine looked at the second officer. You want furniture too? The second officer stopped. Councilman Mercer's eyes sharpened. This is obstruction. Dre held up his notepad. This is a receipt. Olin looked at him for the first time. Recognition flickered. Not of Dre as a person. Of a problem he had failed to count. You work in dining services, Olin said. Dre's face did not change. And you talk too much around catering. Lila smiled despite herself. Serafina kept writing. The paper beneath her pen smoked. Malik moved beside her, shielding her from the councilman without touching the document. Olin's voice cooled. Miss DuPont, you are acting outside your family's interest. Serafina did not look up. I'm acting inside my legal authority. Your mother will correct that. She can try after the filing completes. You think a student document changes city power? No, Serafina said. But I think old magic loves paperwork more than men admit. Mabel grinned. I like this one. Horrible family, but she reads. The chamber shook harder. Olin raised one hand. The second ward officer drew a sigil in the air. Nasir moved before anyone else. He did not attack. He simply stepped between the officer and Serafina. The sigil shattered before it reached him, breaking into red sparks that curled into his skin and vanished. The chamber went silent except for the storm. Nasir looked down at his hand. So did everyone else. Olen's expression changed from irritation to hunger. There, he said softly. Bridge response. Nasir's face closed. Zora stepped beside him without thinking. The roots along the wall moved. Olen smiled. And there. Mabel slammed both hands on the table. Do not look at my blood like an answer key. Professor Graves pointed her cane at him. Leave, Olen. The readout has exposed multiple dangerous student anomalies, Olen said. Council authority permits containment. Imani laughed. It was not funny. Containment, she said. Y'all love a clean word for grabbing people. Howl House shifted behind her. Even Taj. Especially Taj. Olen looked at them with mild contempt. Children playing faction war. Taj stepped forward. Kiki muttered, please don't ruin this. Taj ignored her, eyes on Olen. I'm not on their side. Imani turned her head slightly. Taj continued, I don't even like half these people. But you came down here with fake officers during a city disaster to snatch students from under a black woman's shop. That's not council authority. That's a kidnapping with stationery. Kiki stared at him. Then whispered, that one was kind of clean. Imani said nothing, but something in her shoulders eased. The chamber roots crept closer to Olen's shoes. Serafina signed the final line. The document flashed gold. Dre's notepad burst open by itself, pages flipping until a blank sheet appeared. Words wrote themselves across it in red ink. Emergency Trustee Acceptance, Ashborne Housing Justice Coalition. Dre stared. I hate magical administration. Sign, Lila said. With what? Serafina handed him the pen. Dre signed. The moment his name hit the page, the entire market district above them roared. Not with pain. With release. Every candle flame in the chamber shot upward. The roots along the walls turned green beneath the red light. The ledgers slammed shut one by one. The eviction notices folded themselves into birds of ash and flew into the silver bowl, dissolving in the red water. Above them, through brick and root and storm, they heard people shouting. Not screaming. Cheering. The first seal cracked. Olen Mercer's face twisted. No, he said. Mabel leaned over the table. Yes. The red line running through the chamber snapped. A shock wave threw everyone back. Zora hit the wall hard enough to knock the breath out of her, but Seven's hand caught her before she slid down. Malik grabbed Serafina as shelves collapsed around them. Imani shoved Rome behind her. Kiki grabbed Taj by the collar this time and yanked him away from a falling beam. Brielle, still near the stairs, lost her footing. Juno caught her. For half a second, they clung to each other in the candlelight. Then Brielle shoved them off. Don't make that sentimental. Juno, breathless, said, wouldn't dream of it. When the chamber steadied, the red water in the bowl had turned clear. The documents on the table had changed. Where St. Crowne, Nightingale, Voss, and DuPont holdings had been listed, new words appeared. Held in trust, Ashborne Housing Justice Coalition. Lila covered her mouth. Dre stared at his own signature like it had become a living animal. Serafina sat on the floor, soaked, shaking, silver pen still in hand. Malik crouched beside her. Are you okay? She looked at him. For a second, all her polish was gone. No, she said. And do not make that the most interesting thing about me. He nodded. Okay. Olin stumbled to his feet. The fake officers were gone. Or had never been real enough to stay. He reached for Caleb. Caleb backed away. That small movement surprised everyone, including Caleb. Olin's eyes hardened. Nephew. Caleb swallowed. You used me. Yes, Olin said, as if correcting a child. And you were useful until you became embarrassing. Something in Caleb's face cracked. Not redemption. Not yet. But maybe the first ugly step toward understanding that being pathetic did not make him innocent. He looked at Lila. I can testify. Lila stared at him. You think that fixes $4,000? No. Good. But I can. Olin laughed coldly. Against whom? The council? Blood court? Your own family? Caleb's shoulders shook. Then Talia's voice came from the top of the stairs. Against your raggedy uncle, for starters. Everyone looked up. Talia stood at the entrance with a baseball bat in one hand and two Magnolia Hall girls behind her. Rain soaked her hoodie. The gold mark around her wrist glowed faintly. Zora blinked. How did you get here? Talia lifted her phone. No signal, but the map app started calling me Bracelet Girl and gave directions. Seven looked impressed. The haunted GPS arc. Talia pointed the bat at Caleb. I am not here for you. Caleb nodded quickly. Understood. She pointed it at Olin. I am here because this thing on my wrist started burning every time your name came up, and I don't like grown men putting me in magical group projects. Mabel cackled. Maxine looked at Zora. I like your roommate. Zora, despite everything, said, she's growing on me. Olin took one step toward the stairs. Talia lifted the bat. Imani moved too. So did Malik. So did Maxine. So did Professor Graves. Olin stopped. He looked at all of them, then smiled with the kind of confidence that came from knowing systems rarely punished the people who designed them. You closed one seal, he said. Congratulations. You have made a mess you cannot govern. Mabel's expression went cold. Olin looked at Nasir. The others will open faster now. Court Tower. Wolf Ground. Veil Stage. Each one will demand a cleaner sacrifice than property. Nasir did not move. Olin's gaze slid to Zora. Ask them what happened to Nia Baptiste, he said. Ask why the council stopped calling her a child. Zora's blood turned to ice. Maxine whispered, don't. Olin smiled. Ask what name she uses now. Before anyone could stop him, Olin drew a red line down his own palm with one fingernail and pressed it to the wall. The wall opened behind him. Not a door. A wound. He stepped through it and vanished. The chamber sealed shut. No one spoke. Then the city lights flickered. Once. Twice. Across Ashborne, the redout weakened over the market district. Street lamps shifted from red to warm gold, one block at a time. Phones near Maxine's shop buzzed back to life. Humans cheered outside without knowing why. Vendors poured into the street. Someone started beating a drum. Someone else shouted that the night market was still happening if God and the city allowed it. Inside the chamber, every phone lit up. The shade room below posted. Founder seal 1 closed. Market route refused the transfer. Shout out to paperwork, candle aunties, and dining hall staff with better receipts than the council. But since y'all want mess, ask Zora Baptiste why her dead sister is listed in council records under a different name. Ask Nasir Voss why he remembers her crying. Ask Dean Nightingale why Seal 2 just opened downtown. A second image loaded. A tower of black glass in downtown Ashborne. The Blood Court Donor Tower. At the top, behind a wall of windows, a woman stood in a red dress with her hand pressed to the glass. Her face was blurred, but around her wrist were gold Baptiste beads. Zora stopped breathing. The caption appeared beneath the image. Court Tower Seal active. Welcome back, Aya.